AutoCAD has many tools available in it to ensure that we draw as precisely as we possibly want to. In fact, the amount of accuracy available in AutoCAD is simply amazing. One of the most common and most important accuracy tools in AutoCAD is the OSNAP feature. We've talked about OSNAPs in the past and we've briefly gone over them, but now is a time in which I want to go over them and dig deep into them. OSNAP is short for Object Snap, and there are many ways to gain access to them. To help out, let's open up a file, go to the folder for Chapter 8, and open up the Blocks and Tables file. You've seen this file before, and there's a lot of stuff in it, making it easy to demonstrate many different things in AutoCAD. So let's look at OSNAPs. What do they do? Well, an OSNAP makes sure that you place an object or select an object in a very specific location or place on that object. You can enter in an OSNAP by typing in an alias on the command line. You can use them through shortcut menus, or you can use them with running OSNAPs. Running OSNAPs keep the OSNAPs on all of the time. They're on, they're running, just like your refrigerator is running. To toggle that off and on, press the F3 button. And when you do, your command line will tell you if they've been turned off or turned on. You can also go to the status bar down here in the bottom, and you can click this icon. If the icon is highlighted blue like it is now, that means it's on. Now it's turned off, you see it's not highlighted. To set which of your running OSNAPs are active, you just type in OS on the command line. Just think OSNAP or Object Snap and press Enter. And go to the Object Snap tab. Here you have a lot of controls over a lot of different drafting tools, but we want to go to the Object Snap. You can toggle the OSNAP off and on right here, the running OSNAPs. And here you can select which ones are on. You can select them all by pressing this button, or turn them all off by clicking the Clear All button, and then pick which ones that you want to have running. Typically for me, I'll keep everything on except for Nearest and Parallel. We'll talk about each one of these here in a few moments. Most of them are self-explanatory, and you'd be able to figure them out all on your own anyway, I'm sure. But let's go ahead and look at them. If you put your mouse over them, the cursor, it will tell you what it does. The endpoint snaps to the closest endpoint or corner of an object, such as an arc line, multi-line, polyline, segment, spline, region, 3D object, etc. If it's a line or an arc, a polyline, or any object that has an end to it, or a corner, that's an endpoint. Now, you see the name here, and the middle part is the checkbox. That turns it on, that turns it off. So if it has a check in it, it's on. If it doesn't, it's off. Now, this picture on the left of each one is its glyph. When you go to snap to an endpoint, AutoCAD will draw a box at that endpoint. It will tell you where it is. If you're snapping to the midpoint, which is the middle of that object, then the glyph will look like a triangle. And the circle's center or an arc's center looks like a circle, a node, which is on a point, a quadrant, which is on a circle or arc or ellipse, etc. Each of these has its own specific glyph. That way you know what you're snapping to. So if I'm going to draw a line to the endpoint of this arc, that green box right above my crosshairs is where it's going to go to. That's my endpoint. And if your pop-ups are on, it will also tell you endpoint, so you know. This is a quadrant. The triangle is the midpoint. And right here is the center of that arc. Now, the center of an arc can be difficult to get to. Center of a circle is not so difficult because they're typically real close to it. But what you have to do is hover over that circle or arc first, and you'll see that little plus sign come up. That tells you where the center is. Then you go to it before it disappears, and it will select the center of that object. And there you go. I drew a line from the center of that circle. So we have an endpoint, we have a midpoint, which is the middle of an object, and that object has to have endpoints to it. So you can't go to the midpoint of a circle because, well, this circle has no beginning, it has no end, so it can't have a middle. This arc, though, does. It has a beginning and an end point, so it can have a middle point. The center is for a circle, an arc, or an ellipse. Puts you right in the center of that. A node snaps to a point object or to specific areas on a dimension, and those are called dimension points. And those dimension points are your point A and point B of the length that you're measuring. And the quadrant will go to, well, the quadrant point of a circle and an arc, or even an ellipse. Quadrant point is all the way up on the circle, all the way down, left and right, as you can kind of see on these plus signs or these lines here on this symbol here showing a light. Now, an intersection are just where two objects align. An arc, a circle, anything, wherever they cross each other. An extension, which is kind of cool, it makes a temporary extension. It takes the object like a line or an arc, and even though the line ends, it will continue on about that pathway until you could go and get to another point. So that helps a lot. The insertion point is for a block. So when you insert a block, and we'll talk about blocks later on, but this circle with the lines on it that represents a light fixture is a block. A block is just a series of lines, circles, text, different objects together that make up one object. You can edit that in the block editor, create some, you can copy them, delete them, move them, rotate them, etc. But it has, as every block does, an insertion point. So when you insert that block, that's the base point for the block. And that's what this insertion snap point is. Now the perpendicular will do just that. It will draw a line perpendicular to the selected object. Let me demonstrate the perpendicular one to you. If I have this line here and I want to draw a line, another line from any point, I can draw it over here, and I want it to be 90 degrees to that existing line. Well, I can type in PER for perpendicular, press enter, and no matter where I go on this line, you see where that glyph is, that green glyph? That's where I'm going to go, and it's going to make it perpendicular. So if I draw a line over here, type in PER, press enter, I'm going to automatically draw a line that's perpendicular to that line from my starting point. Now here's something that's kind of cool too. You can also go perpendicular to an arc. If I type in PER, it goes right there. Now essentially a perpendicular line to an arc is radial, meaning it assumes that I'm coming straight from the center of the circle to this endpoint where I started from. As you can see, it's a straight line. So that's kind of neat. So perpendicular can do a lot of different things. And tangent, well, that will draw a line that's tangent to a circle or an arc. Nearest is tricky because it will just put whatever you're drawing wherever. So if I'm clearing everything off and I'm using the nearest, if I want to draw a line to anywhere on this arc, I can. See, my nearest glyph comes up, and it's just picking the point that's closest to where my crosshair is on that object at the time. So if I just want to make sure my line goes to that object, see, I can zoom in as close as I want, make sure I refresh the screen, and it's this line and this arc, they both meet right at that endpoint. So that's why I turn off the nearest, because let me show you. If I turn everything on and I try to draw a line, everything's near. I can accidentally pick the wrong spot, and it's making it difficult to snap to even the endpoint. You really have to get right at the end. Whereas if I turn that off, click OK, draw my line, now I get to my perpendicular spot, my endpoint, or I can even get to a midpoint here. Right there it is. I don't have to be dead on to get to those snap points. I can be relatively close. But with the nearest on, I have to get right on them. And again, if I do want to get near, just as with all OSNAPs, I can always type it right in. And whatever you type in will override all of your running OSNAPs. So now, even if I zoom in as close as I possibly can here, I'm not going to snap to the endpoint unless I just happen to pick it. And we'll continue to look at the various OSNAPs in the next movie.